So, all ready?
Yes, brother.
Bags are packed?
Of course.
Ready to go?
Waiting for the boat.
Waiting for the boat?
Everything is packed up. Buddy.
And you've downloaded Money Heist to watch in quarantine?
Yes.
Perfect.
It's a perfect show.
It's a perfect show, right? Alright, bro. Safe travels, man.
Thank you.
I'm gonna miss you
Thank
here.
you, guys.
Okay, so he's finally going home. It's that time where my brother has done 8 months on the vessel and he's finally gonna get off. Bro, you excited?
Yeah, very excited, my friend.
And the off-signers weren't the only ones who were excited. We were departing the port of Yusu and we were supposed to finally head down south to Thailand, Maptaput. This was a 9-day voyage, which is the longest voyage we've had in the last 3 months. Crew has been exhausted doing China and Korea short voyages, and all they wanted was a little bit of relaxation, routine life, and a good life at sea. Little did we know that things were going to turn out to be way worse than what they already were. In this video, we're talking about life at sea while we sail through a storm. I hope you enjoy this. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to another day at sea. Today's episode has been long awaited because I've been wanting to show you this aspect of sailing for a very long time, but I haven't been able to. So we left Korea a couple of days ago. We were in the port of Yusu and we haven't been to Thailand on this ship ever since I joined. It's been over 3 months, and in the last 3 months, like I said, the average voyage that we've had has been about for 48 hours. We've been hitting ports between 48 hours between China and Korea, but this voyage is actually a 9-day long voyage. So we have new crew on board. The environment is really great. We had a party when we departed the port. Here we are today. We are in the middle of the South China Sea and the weather is insanely rough. The ship is barely doing 7 or 8 knots. Today we're going to be talking about rough weather, how we prepare for rough weather, how we tackle it, and how it affects our life at sea. So as a second mate, I'm in charge of route planning. So pre-departure, when I checked the weather information, it didn't seem too bad. It just looked like low pressure. And normally if you've sailed in Asia, especially like the southeast of Asia during these months, the winter months of the year, anytime from like August going till December, you're used to having a bunch of different storms in the area. So you're really used to this entire climate, and all we saw on our charts was low pressure, which seemed pretty easy. As we progress out of Korea, the weather started to deteriorate a lot more, and we started realizing that the entire route from Korea to Maptaput is governed by low pressure throughout. As you guys can see in the charts that I'm showing you, it's crazy. All the red areas are the low pressure areas where you have strong wind speeds and really strong swell. Now, if you don't know what swell, it's basically the movement of the water which is created due to low pressure. So the movement of the waves, and that's what causes the ship to roll, and that makes your life on a ship really uncomfortable. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we're expecting winds of 30 to 40 knots and waves of 3 to 3.5 meters, sometimes even going up to 4 meters. 4 meters of swell is something that we didn't realize, and it's escalated from the time that we've left the port. So obviously we've taken our precautions, but we're still moving like crazy. I don't know if you guys can see, but my entire horizon at the back is currently shifting, and that is basically because of the movement of the ship. I'm holding the camera as steady as I can, but everything around me is moving, so it's really insane. Take a look. So before I actually go out and show you what this rough weather looks like and what the wind and the swell and how the ship is actually dancing and bouncing through it, I think it's really important for you guys to understand how we as seafarers actually obtain weather-based information on board our ships. So weather-based information is pretty much given to us in 4 different ways. We have 2 satellite-based systems, which is your SAT-C, that's your EGC, Enhanced Group Calling. So depending on what area you're sailing in, you're going to set up your SAT-C devices for that particular met area, and you're going to get the information regarding the meteorological forecast in that area. The other method is also via Navtex, which is basically your navigational and weather warning system, which is basically coming from local stations on land. So as you pass every Navtex station during your voyage, you're pretty much going to get information transmitted to the vessel about weather as well as navigational warnings, which you're pretty much going to have to just plot on your charts and follow every time you go. So it's local information. We also have a really special system known as the SPOS weather program, which I'm going to show you next. Now the weather program is really amazing because it's an online system. It gives you a live feed of the weather around the world, and it updates every 6 hours. You just got to download the update from the internet. It's a lot faster than your SATC and your Navtex because you get continuous feed of information with diagrammatic representation, and you can also put in your routes. And we also have, most companies now also have a special system known as weather routing. Now weather routing is super special. What you ideally do is you prepare a route already, which is what I do, and then I take that route, I take all the coordinates, all the latitudes and longitudes, essentially waypoints like you have on Google Maps, and I take all those waypoints, put them into an Excel sheet and send it to my weather routing provider. Now, your weather routing provider will be a subscription-based service that your company has tied up with some weather-based company assured. They're going to analyze your route, they're going to analyze the weather, and then they're going to send you information and route recommendations so that you can steer away from the heavy weather. Now remember, weather routing is not always accurate because sometimes the forecasts are very different to what you're actually experiencing out at sea. So it is master's discretion at the end of the day. And unfortunately, this low pressure developed so fast that we got our information really, really late, irrespective of the fact that we have 4 different systems. So yeah, that's basically where we stand. Monitoring forecasts every few hours, and we're basically just taking decisions basis what we're actually experiencing out at sea. So what you guys were looking at right now was the heavy weather checklist, which brings me to pre-preparations now. As an officer on the ship or as an engineer on the ship, your job, once you get to know about heavy weather, is to instruct your team, instruct your crew to take precautions. Your crew has secured absolutely everything on deck. There should be no loose items on deck. There should be lashings provided for your anchors. Your entire ship should be completely secure so that if you have something known as shipping seas, which we're going to get into in a couple of seconds, or if you have, heavy rolling and heavy pitching and the ship's movement is not normal due to the heavy weather, nothing that's important, nothing that's required, nothing that's expensive, and no equipment goes overboard. As you guys can see, we have a really huge open deck, and all ships have this, and it's really dangerous. In times of rough weather or while rolling and pitching, things can actually get lost at sea, and that is something that we have to make sure. Similarly, the engineers in the engine room have a large number of tanks, have a large number of machinery that do have loose equipment, things that need to be secured. So make sure all your machinery is safe, there's no obstructions, there's nothing that can roll around or move around in the engine room and damage any of the machinery due to the movement of the ship. Every company has a heavy weather checklist, and this checklist is going to differ from company to company, so you're going to have to figure out what yours is. There's only one way of securing your ship. These checklists are basically guides so that you can actually do that, and the crew actually has to go on deck. Special precautions are taken. Similarly, when you're out at sea and you have heavy weather, nobody is technically allowed to go on deck or in the engine room without the master or the chief engineer's permission, because safety of life is imperative, and this is one of those moments where safety of life can get hampered if you don't follow procedures. Okay, so I want you guys to look at the horizon in the next few minutes. Right now, the wind and the waves are from the beam, which basically means our ship is currently rolling from side to side, and the entire horizon is moving. We have more than 10 degrees of roll at this given point in time, which is pretty insane. It gets really, really hard to even stand on the ship at this point. So I want you guys to see what this actually looks like. Now, this can get seafarers to feel really, really seasick, and seasickness is a real thing. On our ships, we have a policy where if anyone is feeling sick, The person who is not feeling sick, the other crew member will take over his job, will perform his duties, will give them adequate rest. We have to safeguard our crew. We have to make sure people's health is in good condition, and that's basically what we're doing right now. Now, seasickness out at sea is super underrated because everyone just believes that if you're a sailor, you're not going to get seasick, but that's so not true. It depends on the kind of ship that you're working on and the size of ship. Like bigger ships take a larger amount of nature force and weather force for them to actually roll to a point where crew will get seasick. But smaller ships like the ones that I'm sailing on, I mean, we even roll at anchor sometimes, and that's insane because that's really, really unheard of for people who are working on larger ships. The reason why I say seasickness is underrated is because when you're working on smaller ships, you're still going to have to work your entire contract. You're still going to have to go through this seasickness because your schedules are so hectic and your port rotations are so short. You have to do your job irrespective of how sick you actually feel. Seafarers really put in a lot of work when they're out at sea, which is something that people on land don't actually realize, and I think it's really important that we start giving seafarers the credit that they do. Also, sailing through a storm is avoidable a lot of times. You have a voyage and you have heavy weather or you have a storm passing by. You do normally have certain points in your voyage where you will not have any rough weather, which are sheltered or they're landlocked, so you can actually enter those areas and stop your ship. But as you guys saw in the weather diagram that I showed you, South Korea till Thailand is red in color, which basically means we're going to have low pressure throughout, and there's really no place we can take shelter because we're entering the South China Sea and then the Gulf of Thailand. So the best way is to basically ride through it. We had a navigation meeting where the captain basically altered the courses and amended the route a little bit so that we could reduce the effect of the weather and avoid any damage to the ship due to rough weather. But that's basically that. That's all we can do, and the only option we have is to chug through this weather and get to our destination as soon as possible. Another thing I want to cover is how hard it is to actually work when you have rough weather because, well, technically everything is moving. Your entire ship is vibrating. As you can see, everything vibrates. Your computers are always shaking. Your files are always falling. You're pretty much holding on to everything. As a matter of fact, it even gets really, really hard to walk. Like I'm on the bridge and I'm having to lean onto either side due to the weather so that I can keep my balance. So yeah, it's not the easiest task in the world to work during rough weather, but you still got to do your basic things. You still have to get your basic job done, which means the minimum amount of crew still needs to perform their duties on a daily basis. And yeah, this is a challenge that we have that most people on land don't understand, and that's exactly why I'm making this video, so that a lot of you can get an insight to what our life at sea is actually like. There are times when you're not in a storm, where the entire sea area, the entire Met area that you're sailing in just has low pressures formed for whatever reasons, and you cannot avoid the effects of rough weather, rolling, pitching, and you just gotta power through it. And this is a fact of life. This is a reality of life at sea. There is always a happy ending. The happy ending in this story is when we're gonna reach our destination port safely without damaging the ship, without hampering the crew, by just powering through this rough weather. Okay, so I'm currently on the bridge wing. If there's a lot of sound, it's pretty much because of how much wind we have right now. It is insane, you guys. Look at this. The wind is pretty much crazy. I don't even know if you guys can actually hear me right now or not, but it's insane. You can see the waves down there. You can see the seahorses. They're actually moving in a different direction, so the swell is actually abeam. So this is causing a large amount of movement on the vessel right now. And this is rough weather, you guys. There's strong winds, there's strong sea. It's insane. It's one of the craziest moments that you can have on any ship. It's honestly really hard for me to be able to explain what this actually feels like. If you guys have ever been on an aircraft and you've experienced turbulence, imagine living in turbulence as long as the ship is sailing in heavy weather. As time went by, we sailed through the rough weather, reached our destination port, and continued living our lives out at sea. Thank you for watching this episode, and I hope you learned something today. A special thank you to the galley department on every ship for preparing food and keeping us well fed throughout our voyages, irrespective of the wind, the weather, the circumstances, and the situations. Thank you for watching today's episode. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.